Hello guys, I felt a bit inspired to make a video this morning. Um, I was just having my daily Reddit browse and I was noticing that a lot of stuff was coming up on the relationships and also the addiction forums. And I was finding myself like sort of replying to some of these things and sort of like offering a little bit of insight here and there. And I was thinking like it would be really good to make a video, keep highlighting and key pointing some of what I've personally learned in regards to communication, how to improve communication with intimate partners, with people that we're dating. And this doesn't just apply to intimate partners, it's not just going to apply to people we have a romantic relationship with, but it's also going to be just like friends as well, family members, anyone really. I think sometimes we often don't have the education or the sense of really having someone give us good advice or guide us into how to have proper communication with another person. There's quite a lot there. There's a wealth of information. I've personally found myself very fascinated in this, and my story with it, I guess, is really that I grew up not really seeing very clear communication. There was a lot of fighting and a lot of conflict in my family home. A lot of people around me, even like my friends' parents, there was often like a lot of conflict, and it's just something I saw a lot of. And I guess for me, I was often quite reactive rather than responsive growing up, because that's just kind of like what I saw a lot of the time. And throughout my teens and throughout as I started to have intimate relationships and sexual relationships and deeper friendships, I think in a lot of ways there was a lot of insecurity and a lot of issues with attachment. There was a lot of kind of like sense of desperation, and even now to this day, like I can notice that come through at times. It's something that I'm able to observe and sort of work, like I'm able to kind of let it be there and not really have much of a problem with it, sometimes to the point where I'm able to kind of just even like smile and laugh at myself doing that. And that's taken quite a lot of work, but it still can be there. So I'm exonerating myself now. I'm not saying it's like I'm a master of communication, but also what I can also say with a lot of pride and a lot of happiness in my voice is that I do actually have some incredible relationships in my life where the level of communication is just absolutely is impeccable. And I'm telling you guys, when you can actually develop a really clear and high quality line of communication with the people in your lives, the well-being that you're going to experience and the sense of joy in meeting up with people, even if like me, you're kind of an introverted, more ambiverted kind of person, the sense of security and joy that you're going to get, the value that you're going to be able to extract and also imbue into your relationships is going to be really high, and it's really going to be worth the little bit of work. So where do we begin with this? So I think that when I look at communication and connection that's off in people, when I go by what people bring to me, and I also go by like my own experiences and what I've read about, what I've learned about, I can sort of see that a lot of the time there's an inability to understand the sort of like the basic fundamental steps of actually having a communication with another person. And by this I mean, even for me, like a lot of the time I'll hang out with someone, I'll go on a date with someone, I'll meet up with someone. When I was studying last year at uni, and I would like talk to people sometimes in my course, for example, and I've noticed this really interesting thing where it's like they literally wouldn't pay attention to what I was saying. And this was always a bit shocking to me because I've noticed this for years. This has always been a bit shocking to me, to be honest. But maybe you can relate, maybe you can experience this, but you start talking to someone and they literally will stand in front of you, like as if like the camera's in front of me now, as if I'm sitting right in front of you. And then like you're telling me something, let's say you're telling me something about your life, and I'll just be like, yeah, like, and then so, oh right, like, oh yeah, and it's like you can, if you're sensitive, even if you're not that sensitive, maybe you're just like observant in that moment, you can sense that their attention is not with you. You can sense that their attention is darting around in, like, it's intercepting into this thought and that thing that's happened, and then it's like and then it's going out to, and then sometimes, and what's like absolutely horrific to me, like when I watch, I walk by restaurants sometimes and I see people eating dinner together and they're both individually on their phones while they're eating a meal together. I cannot believe that. Like, for me, there is no, there, like, fair enough if you're at dinner and you have an important thing that you need to respond to, and you're with a friend or you're with your partner and you say, like, excuse me, like, hey babe, like, hey man, like, I just need to get to this, I know it's just, give me a sec, sorry, and you like attend to that, and then you put your phone back down and it's something that happened, like, I can understand that. But when it comes to, like, you're actually out with another person, you've agreed to go have a meal or spend time with this person, and you're actually sitting on your phone, I cannot believe that. So that's really the first thing, is like, are you actually paying attention to the other person? And there are different scales and degrees of this, right? I remember there's like this fantastic bit in one of my absolute favorite books. I've read this book 3 times now because I just get more value out of it every time I read it. And it's The Road Less Traveled by M. Scott Peck, one of my favorite psychotherapists. Just a really incredible insight into human spiritual development, human growth. And in The Road Less Traveled, there's a part where he talks about rearing children, raising children. And he talks about like the different stages of attention that we're able to pay. And it's not just in the context of children, but he means in everyday life. And I think in the book, I believe he gives 5 stages. And he sort of says like stage 1 is almost as if you're aware of that child's presence, but you have so many other things to do. It's like, and he's saying like the child acknowledges that as like you're there, but like they're not really able to interact with you. They don't really have much of a line of connection. And then he sort of highlights stage 5 as like, you're absolutely with the child. You're absolutely there paying attention. You're like fully given your attention. And you can actually do a test of this right now, even as you're watching this video. Are you watching this video like on a TV or a laptop, but you're also on your phone and you're also thinking about the next thing, and you're also like eating crackers with guacamole, and or are you actually paying attention to what I'm saying right now? Like, are you actually able to tune your consciousness into what I am saying right now? Are you able to be present in the moment with me right now? Because if you're actually hoping to get any kind of value out of this, or anything else, anything that you pursue, any relationship that you pursue, the number one thing and the most simple thing is that your attention is your biggest investment. It's the most valuable currency that you have. So when you're doing something, when you're with another person, when you're with your partner, when you're with your friend, obviously, like, sometimes you're doing other things at once. You can't just always give people your undivided attention. He says that in the book, right? It's like sometimes you do need to give your child a 2 or a 3, or sometimes even a 1 when you're managing other things. But every human being, to develop a healthy sense of ego and a healthy sense of self and a sense of feeling validated, and that they can give that validation healthily to another person, requires some level of 5 in their life, or at best a regular 4. You're having people listen to what you have to say and acknowledge you is your human right. And if you weren't provided that earlier on in life, you are going to feel very desperate and very clingy oftentimes in conversations. And you're going to be grasping outward for an exogenous, like a thing that allows you to feel like you have the attention you need. And that's why sometimes you see people who do go over the top, and you can tell that they are seeking attention at a very, it's almost like they create a vacuum. You know what I'm talking about? You see people, they create a vacuum in their environment where they're just sucking in all this attention. And again, there's a healthy desire to have attention and to be validated. And then on the other side over here, you have, I need this, all this validation. And if people don't give me everything I need, then it's like lest I should like dissolve. And it really comes down to the fact that we haven't had a lot of this high grade attention. So again, when you're speaking to people, are you really able to pay attention to them? Like, yeah, you're gonna have other thoughts come up. Yeah, something's gonna come in. Yeah, a dog's gonna walk by and you're gonna want to like pat it. But are you able to actually sit or stand or walk or whatever with someone and actually tune into them and pay attention to what they're saying? And this isn't a technique. It's not something that you add on. It's you take stuff away to get back to this point, because someone's trying to communicate something to you, and we tend to get the lowest of our standard, don't we? The psychology tells us that we tend to get the lowest of our standards. I love this concept because it's like, if my standard is that I'm giving you my full attention, the lowest of that is, well, if it's full attention, and the lowest of full attention is still full attention. But the lowest of that there is going to be, I get most of what you're saying. Oftentimes when we have conflict communicating things to our partners or communicating things to the people in our life, it's really just simply that we're not fully paying attention to what they're saying. We're hearing the general gist of what they're saying, and then we're relating it to stuff they've said before or that we know before, and then we're formulating our response. But only a small amount of our mental bandwidth and our cognitive functionality is actually going into listening to what that other person is saying. There is something magical about when someone sits with you and they're actually present and listening to what you're saying, and you're actually present, and it feels so good to be able to give this out to other people as well. Once you've got a bit more, it's like if you're able to sit and enjoy just like observing your own mind, even, it's so pleasurable to do that when you're talking to other people. And some people are like, for example, I have friends who actually, like, every time I listen to them deeply, they thank me afterwards. And that's nice in a way. It's not really always necessary, and I do the same thing to them, because I often felt like there was more that I wanted to be listened to for when I was growing up. There was more that I wanted people to understand. There was more that I wanted to say. And because of that, I think I'm also a bit sensitive to that. It's like, if someone's really listening to me, I'm very conscious of the space that I'm taking up. And I've got a bit better with that. Like, I'm quite comfortable taking up space at this rate. But there are times where before it's like I've almost like sabotaged the space and the listening, because I didn't really know if it was like gonna go, if it was just gonna disappear, or, and these patterns can slip back in here and there, but I think the important thing is to be mindful of them. So number one, are you actually paying attention to what your partner's saying? It's not a difficult question. Not, are you formulating the right responses? Not, the foundation for communication has to be attention. So are you paying attention to what they're saying? Do you feel like you're being paid attention to? So that's the first thing I think that I can acknowledge and see, that it seems so simple when you actually think about it, but it's not common. It can actually be something that we are lacking a lot of the time. So are you paying attention? The other things, we're going to start to get a bit more nuanced. So another thing that we can start to notice is that there's communication styles, and we won't go into some whole in-depth model about communication styles. There is some interesting stuff on this regarding the counseling and the therapy fields. For example, like transactional analysis has some interesting back and forth stuff about this regarding like the child, parent, adult archetype, not really archetypes, but functions. MBTI has some really interesting stuff regarding Jungian cognitive functions, modes of communication, modes of thought, how we interrelate to other people. There's some really interesting information out there. So if you are actually interested in communication styles, or even like love languages, things like this, go and take some time to do a bit of research. Like, you don't need me to tell you where to go. Just go look up communication styles and get a bit of a sense into that. Again, attention is your number one resource. So funnel that attention into the things that you'd like to see grow in your life. Learn about communication styles. But in a more simple, earthy, intuitive way, what is your partner's communication style? Can you actually sit and talk with your partner about what's going on. Like, for example, if you're having some conflict and it keeps arising, it keeps coming up, it keeps bothering you, it keeps getting in the way of you guys having a harmonious connection together as a couple, or even as just friends or family members, once again, or work colleagues even. Are you actually able to appreciate that person's style of communication? So these all come from that first step of really paying attention. But then the next thing is, am I able to sit with you and recognize how you're actually communicating to me? And are you able to recognize how I'm communicating to you? Like for me, for example, my communication style is very self-aware. And I don't just mean that in the sense of like, oh, I'm so aware of myself. There are lots of things I'm unconscious of, obviously. What I mean is that I tend to speak in a way where like I'm kind of darting around within my own mental stratosphere and sort of like picking. And another way of saying it, and this really relates to me, is my communication style is very what I would call authenticity based. It's not easy for me to get up and do a presentation for you guys today. And that's why this video isn't about the top 3 ways to improve your communication right now. That's not me. That would not come through cleanly to me. And even just putting myself in that space, it starts to draw from my energy, because that's a very extroverted, very, when I say manipulative, I don't mean that it's like bad, like no one should. I'm just saying it is a manipulative kind of communication. It appeals to the largest amount possible, but it doesn't necessarily reach. And my way is more about reaching. That's why I prefer one-on-one or small group conversations. If I'm working with someone one-on-one, I'm able to usually get a lot more done. So my communication style feels really good when it's authentic. So it means that I'm in a state of alignment and resonance with what I'm saying. So even like right now, if I close my eyes and I don't necessarily have to think about what I'm saying to you next about communication. Like I don't have any notes in front of me. I didn't watch like a bunch of videos on this. Like, yeah, sure, I have read many books about this. And yeah, I have studied counseling. I have studied mental health. I have put a lot of time into psychology. I have been in therapy. Like I have learned a lot of stuff about this accumulatively. But the reason I'm able to speak what I want to say in the best way naturally is because there's a felt sense of alignment. And where that can be breached for me, where communication tends to go wrong for me, is if I don't feel like I can be honest, if I don't feel like I can speak my truth with you. If I don't feel like I can speak my truth with you, we're not going to have a good connection most of the time. That's why I quit my last, and it's not the entire reason I quit my last job, but one of the reasons I walked out of that job spontaneously is because I recognized this, like, although I can share where my issues are, I'm not good at doing, I didn't really feel like I was being acknowledged for what my problems were, and I didn't really feel that was the time. And when it came to like talking to customers and stuff, it's almost like, hi, it's like smile on the phone. It's like, and I understand that from a marketing perspective, but when it comes to one-on-one communication, it's like, what comes to communication with anyone, I need to feel like I can authentically resonate with what I'm saying. So resonance is very big for me. And people who are close in my life know that. They know when something's wrong because they're like, what's going on? It's like, because I get scrambled. It's like, I can't really say what I need to say. But when I'm actually in rhythm and I feel comfortable, that's when the best stuff comes out of me. And I don't really have to think much about what I'm going to say next. The best stuff just comes out. And that's also when I have my best dates. That's also when I have my best bonding moments with my friends. It's also when I'm able to connect with my mum best. Anyone and everyone, really. Because it's like, it comes from a place of like, I'm not like thinking, what's the right way? Like if I'm on a date, for example, I'm not thinking like, what's the right way of like, oh, we spent 3 hours together, which means now we have to, it's like, no, it's just in that moment, you're present with her in the moment, and you're just observing what's going on with her, and you're smiling and you're making eye contact and you're connecting, and then you're moving with the situation. So you're in rhythm, you're in flow, you're authentic. So that's my communication style, as a couple notes. I'm just giving that as an example. But yours might be a lot more, in like the MBTI system, you might be like more on the J end of things, the judging end, and not in the sense of like scolding, but in MBTI, judging means like you're assessing basically. It means that you're more like a factual communicator. Like my ex-girlfriend, we often would have clashes because although our ability to listen and understand one another was quite high, where things were difficult is that she's a lot more objective and like sort of judging focused in a way. So she would look at things of more like problems to be solved, where I would look at things more like experience to be had in that moment. It's almost like, how are we going to move to the next thing would be how she was thinking. I'd be thinking, how are we going to fully experience this so we can integrate this? And in a lot of ways, she taught me a lot and gave me a lot of value because I started to pick up on more of her way of thinking. And I think that I had that same effect on her. So yeah, that's the second point. Learn more about your learn more your communication style. Learn more about your communication style. Take a bit of time to research more about your own personality, your style of communication. What are styles of communication? Actually integrate this stuff. Don't just think that a YouTube video is going to give you all of what you need. Like, take a bit of time to learn some of the theory and also contemplate this for yourself. Like, what feels right for me, or what do I think is right in communication? When am I really most myself? When I'm talking to my partner, do I really feel like myself? And you can ask your partner that if you're in a good space together. You can ask, hey, babe, like, when do you feel like you're most yourself? Like, do you feel like you can really express yourself when you're communicating? Like, don't just tell me that, but do you? And you can start to see, like, you can start to unearth, like, what is actually going on here. Here's how we're going to get to that next stage of communication, right? It starts to just make sense. So are you actually paying attention? And what is your preferred style of communicating? And what is your partner's preferred style of communicating? How much do you know about that? Take a bit of time to talk to them about that, acknowledge that in yourself and understand it. On top of that, this one is going to be more focused around actually how... I'm trying to think of how to put this really clearly. So sometimes what can happen, particularly in our relationships, is that we don't feel like the other person is getting us. And although we could just relay that back to the first and second, like, these are all stacked on top of each. They're not separate from one another. They're not three separate points. They're all one point. They're different perspectives of one point. They're like a tesseract. So we have to acknowledge them from different angles. But one thing that I notice, and I'll give you an analogy here. If you imagine like New York, right? New York is separated into 4 different boroughs. So you say you have like Staten Island and Brooklyn, but then you have the Golden Gate Bridge connecting them, right? So you have that, is it the Golden Gate? I believe so. You have that big red bridge connecting them. And then imagine like you have this bridge like that, but imagine it's just like a dilapidated, shitty, broken, bomb-destroyed bridge. And it's like, imagine it's just like some old bridge that's like cracked and it's still technically connecting the boroughs, but it's all just like destroyed and acid rained down and tarnished, like, to fucking terrible, right? But then imagine you have like a Tesla, like a brand new Tesla or like a Lambo going across that bridge. And that's sometimes what communication can look like. Like, that Lambo or that Tesla's our point, but then the bridge we have to communicate with the other person is fucking shite. So we have a really good point. Why can't you understand me? Isn't it obvious? I'm trying to tell you what it is. Like, my point is so good, but we put no time into actually mapping out and acknowledging what a good bridge to get from one place to the other is, from one person to the other in this case. Instead, we just put more focus into how awesome our sick Tesla is. And we do this, don't we, guys? Like, be honest. Like, you do this in your life. You've done this in your life. I've done this. Sometimes it's like we can't really make amends with someone, or we can't connect with someone. We don't feel like they're getting our point of view. So what we do, almost unconsciously, instead of working on how we're actually going to improve our communication. What we do instead, sorry, it's a weird sound. What we actually do instead is we often just work on like refining our own point and then like creating more of a victim mentality around how we're not understood. And yes, we do have, as I mentioned before, legitimate needs for validation that do need to be put into perspective. And yeah, if someone's like not willing to understand us no matter what, it is very frustrating, and it probably feels the same way to them if we're doing that to them. And often because we don't know how to handle this and we don't have the sense of space and sort of disidentified presence with our own point of view to be like, you know what, right now I'll put, like, if we could consciously say right now, it's like, okay, she's not getting what I mean. Right now, I'm going to put my thing aside. I do need to be able to communicate that for my own well-being, but I'll put that aside and instead I'll focus on the bridge. So forget my car. I'll just park that bad boy. What is the bridge between us right now? So instead of saying, hey, no, but just try to, no, I know you think that, but just try to get my thing. Just try to understand my point though. Instead of just like pushing that towards one another, if we could actually freeze and say, I feel like it's like no matter how good my point is or yours is, we're not really seeing eye to eye here. And I feel like we need to figure out how to bridge this. So what I think would be really good right now is like, I'm just going to sit and listen and tell me what your thing is, because I do want to understand your point of view. I want to know where you're coming from. And I feel like if I understand where you're coming from and you understand where I'm coming from, we're going to be able to reach something better rather than just feeling like we both need to be right. So tell me where it is. And, you know, do you feel that difference? Like even that, just as an example, do you feel that difference? And it is hard to do in the moment, and it's easy to sit up here and act like it's like, oh yeah, just do that. But it's like, it is hard in the moment, but you grow through hard experiences. You grow through the hard times. You grow through the things that challenge you. So when you're with your girl, or when you're with, maybe not when you're with your friend, I don't know, it depends on your relationship. But when you're with your girl, for example, if she's trying to tell you something and your bridge is messed up, let her know that you want to understand her point of view and hold her hand. Or stop and say, can I just hold you for a minute? Can I hug you? You know, it's like, I know that we're having a conflict right now. I know that we don't feel like we understand each other, but I want you to know that I still love you, that I still care about you, that I do. Or maybe you're not at that point in the relationship where you're throwing lovey-doveys out. So instead it's like, I want to understand where you're coming from. And for me personally, there have been times where someone has offered me that and I've actually just been reduced to tears before I've even been able to say what it is that I want to say. And it is just because that person wanted to acknowledge what I meant. And when it's kind of counterintuitive, because sometimes if we go at conversation and communication with a scarcity mindset of like, only one of us can, you know, it's like there's only a limited amount of time to speak. And this, when we go about it like that, we actually counterintuitively end up not getting very far. Where when there's a sense of, I want to give you all the space in the world to communicate what you need to me because I fucking love you. I care about you. I want to know what you're saying. And I don't want this to come between us as a big thing. That triggers other people to want to give the same thing back to you. This is a basic law of human return and exchange. So in the conversation, even if you need to take a break from the conversation and have 10 minutes by yourselves, like, the question is, how can I understand you better? Like, that's what I'm asking. How am I able to offer you more value? How can I understand you better here? And, you know, that is going to prompt people to want to give that back to you more, trust me. And when you're given that back, you recognize that sometimes even the thing you're talking about, like, it's so secondary. This is such a funny thing because it's like, when you're in the resistance and you're in the scarcity and you're in the I want to get my fucking point down packed with you mode, you really think that it's about your point. But what you recognize when you have this space and this shift happens is it's not as much about the point as you think it is. what it's about actually in large part is it's about you being received and trusting the other person. It's about having a trusting and affectionate bond and exchange. More than you think. More than you think. The other stuff is ancillary. Your point still needs to be made so it can be integrated, but it needs to be, look at it like this, right? If the point that you're making, what you're talking about is a seed, love, space, compassion, acceptance, and a sense of being able to really pay attention to the other person and know your style of connection well, that is nitrogen, sunlight, water, base minerals, and manure. It's a fertile ground for you to have your idea grown into the other person. And that's the same with like, same with like meeting new people. Like when you meet new people on the street, for example, if you're present and connected with them and you're actually like, hi, I really just, sorry, I know this is a bit random, but I really just wanted to come up and say that I thought you were absolutely gorgeous and I just had to meet you. Or you see someone, you're like, hey man, I just wanted to say I love your watch. Or like you see someone at work and you're like, hey man, how you going? Like, and you're actually there with them. That's a fertile ground to grow a relationship from. Where if you're just scattered and focusing about on what you need and how you can get, counterintuitively, you feel more and more lack and scarcity. Where when you're more abundant and present with other people, you're given that same thing back. And that's my observation. So again, we've got 3 points there, 3 major points. We've got, are you actually paying attention? What is your preferred style of communication? How good of a bridge of communication do you actually have between you? And again, these are all one point. They're different angles of the same point. This is all about your ability to exchange and, give and receive information at an effective rate. And I could just keep free flowing and free associating about communication, and we'll have more stuff coming out about communication because it's an area that I'm really passionate about. But for this now, if you actually got some value out of this, help me out, subscribe, like the video, and share this if there's someone you feel like will get value out of it. Maybe you can actually even, if you're in a space to do so, share it with your partner if you feel like this could be valuable. That's me. I hope you're having a beautiful day. And yeah, I'm going to take off. Thanks for watching.